A single breath hangs in the air, heavy with everything you didn't say. In that pause, the world shifts, unseen, unfelt by those too busy spilling their thoughts into the void. We're taught that power roars, that it demands to be heard above the clamor of a crowded room. Yet the one who sits still, lips sealed, eyes tracing every hurried word, holds a force that drowns out the noise without ever raising their voice. Picture a battlefield, not of swords or fire, but of minds locked in a silent duel. The victor isn't the one who strikes first, but the one who waits, letting the enemy exhaust their arsenal on empty air. Words are a currency we spend too freely, scattering coins of intent where they're trampled underfoot. To hold them back, to let them gather weight in the quiet, is to wield a fortune few understand. You've felt it, the itch to fill a silence, to prove you're present, to claim your stake in the moment. But in that rush, how often have you handed over pieces of yourself you never meant to give? There's a man who once watched a kingdom crumble, not because he spoke too little, but because others spoke too much. His stillness was a mirror, reflecting their fears, their ambitions, until they tripped over their own tongues to fill the void he left. We live in a time where every thought is a shout, every feeling a billboard lit up for the world to judge. Yet the more we reveal, the less we retain, our power leaking out with every careless confession. Think of the last time you sat across from someone who wouldn't speak, their silence pressing against you like a weight. Didn't it make you restless, desperate to crack the mystery, while they gathered your every word like a hunter stalking prey? The art of restraint isn't weakness. It's a blade honed in the dark, sharp enough to cut through chaos when the moment calls. To speak without purpose is to swing wildly, wounding yourself as often as your target. History whispers of those who shaped empires not with speeches, but with the spaces between them. Their presence loomed larger because it wasn't shouted, it was felt, a shadow that stretched beyond the noise. You've seen it in the smallest moments, a glance held too long, a pause that lingers, shifting the air. That's where power hides, in the tension of what's unsaid, pulling others into its orbit without a single word. We're conditioned to fear the quiet, to see it as a chasm we must bridge with sound. But what if that emptiness is a canvas, waiting for you to paint it with intent instead of desperation? Imagine a table of voices, each vying to dominate, while one figure leans back, unreadable. When they finally speak, the room stills, not out of force, but because the silence before it made their words inevitable. There's a cost to every syllable, a gamble where you bet your leverage on the table. The wise know this, guarding their thoughts like a vault, opening it only when the prize is worth the price. Look at the world around you, people pouring their lives into endless streams of noise, craving eyes to affirm their worth. Meanwhile, the one who watches, who listens, collects the pieces they discard without ever showing their hand. Silence isn't a retreat, it's a stance, a refusal to be dragged into the fray until the ground is yours to claim. It's the predator's patience, the stillness that signals a storm brewing just beyond the horizon. We fear what we can't grasp, and a mind that won't yield its secrets becomes a fortress. In its shadow, others falter, spilling their truths to pierce the riddle, only to find it deepens with every attempt. You've met them, the ones who talk until their voice frays, unraveling their strength with every breath. Then there's the other, whose quiet feels like a judgment, a gavel poised above the chaos, waiting to strike. Power isn't in being loud, it's in being deliberate, a force that doesn't beg for attention but commands it by existing. The moment you stop chasing the spotlight, it turns to find you, drawn to the mystery you've built. Pause for a second. Think of the next time you're pulled into a storm of words. Could you step back, let the silence stretch, and watch what it unearths from those who can't bear its weight? We're obsessed with laying ourselves bare, as if transparency is the key to being seen. But what remains of you when every corner of your soul is lit up, leaving nothing to wonder, nothing to desire? Silence is a paradox. It shields you by exposing others, strengthens you by holding back. It's the dark pool where your words gain depth, rippling out with force when you choose to let them fall. The great minds of the past didn't conquer with noise. They watched, they waited, letting others tire themselves out in the open. Their victories were carved in the quiet, where every move was a choice, not a reflex. We tie strength to volume, as if the loudest voice wins the day. But what if real might lies in the courage to stand firm, to let the world clamor while you hold your ground in stillness? In a life where betrayal and ambition swirl like dust in the wind, the one who masters silence cuts through it all. Their power isn't borrowed from the crowd. It's forged in the spaces they refuse to fill. Imagine yourself caught in a clash, voices rising, emotions fraying at the edges. Could you be the one who stops, who listens, who turns the tide not with words, but with the absence of them? Every day we're buried under an avalanche of sound, voices screaming for our gaze, our reaction. Yet the one who steps aside, who wields silence like a blade, pierces the din without ever joining it. This isn't about fading away. It's about claiming the stage on your terms, bending the moment to your will. When you choose silence, you're not just a player. You're the one who writes the rules. Power isn't a gift handed to you. It's a muscle, flexed in the choices you make, the words you withhold. The less you give, the more you become. A presence that lingers long after the noise fades. Look at yourself, at the habits you've built. How quick are you to speak, to fill the air with proof of your existence? What might shift if you let the quiet settle? Let it whisper truths you've drowned out. In a world that never stops talking, silence feels like a rebellion, a refusal to play by rules that demand your soul on display. It's a power that doesn't shout. It waits, and in waiting, it wins. The one who speaks sparingly doesn't lack for words. They're rich with them, hoarding their weight until the moment is ripe. When they break the silence, the world bends, hungry for what's been kept back. Power isn't noise, it's intent, a force that moves unseen until it strikes. The silent strategist doesn't fight for attention. They claim it by stepping into the void others fear to face. So here we stand, drowning in a sea of voices, chasing depth in a shallow tide. What would it mean to pull back, to let silence redefine you, not as a shadow, but as the light that cuts through? After all this, one question presses against the quiet, daring you to answer. In a world that begs you to speak, are you brave enough to hold your tongue and let the stillness shape your fate?